Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and since 2010, I've run the Songwriters on Process website, where you can find more than 200 conversations with songwriters about the creative process. I'm not here to talk about tour stories, band drama, how a band got its name, or favorite foods. My goal is to treat songwriters as writers, plain and simple. This is an intelligent conversation about the writing process between two writers. And today's interview is with Tim Kasher. Kasher, as you may know, fronts the band Cursive, but he has a new solo album out, not with the band, obviously. It's his fourth solo album. It's called Middling Age. And this is also the second time I've talked to Kasher. The first one was, I believe, in 2011. And so this is a refresher on his songwriting process. We did talk a lot, first of all, about Hemingway. A lot of Hemingway references in here. Tim talked about the thing that I had forgotten that Hemingway said, actually, about how you should always write when you're hungry, because the drive to write will be strong when you crave something, when you're hungry, when you want something. And so I'd forgotten Hemingway said that. So we talked about Hemingway's perspective on that. The one where he does differ from Hemingway is Hemingway always said that you should write first, then read later. But Kasher is the opposite. He reads every morning. He loves to read first thing in the morning. He reads before he writes. He's a big reader, as you'll hear. And he said if he doesn't get to it first thing in the morning, it's really hard to do it later. And I feel the same way. He feels like his synapses are firing the strongest in the morning, and that's when he reads, as he says, militantly, and it's a very important part of his daily schedule. And as you can tell, as I've always said, the songwriters who read the most are often write the best lyrics. So he's also a big believer in the rested brain. So he gets up early and writes in the morning. I'm the same way. We talked about how we could never write late at night. Brain just kind of shuts off. Maybe that's because we're getting old. I don't know. And here's the one thing that really struck me. That when he writes music, he likes to have on a B movie, like a B movie action or horror movie, not engaging with it, but have it on. And that helps him write music, not lyrics, just music. So, the big thing, we talked Hemingway a lot today. And I thought we talked about one of his favorite books was A Movable Feast. And that is also one of my favorite Hemingway books. So with that, here's my interview with Tim Kasher. So thanks for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
and,
thank
you. As I said, we're just going to be laser focused on you as a writer and in your writing process. So I guess the first thing I usually start with is it important to create or to write every day in some fashion? Like some songwriters tell me, don't push it or gets derivative. Some of them say you got to do it every day, if nothing else, just because eventually the good stuff will come. But where do you fall on that spectrum of creating every day? Yes or no?
Well, first thing that popped in my mind is that this seems like the type of thing where there's no wrong answer, right? Like that's, however, whatever a particular writer, however they feel, that must be. I hope that they're figuring out the right answer for themselves. I don't. My experience is, I certainly don't require to be working or writing every day. That might be, I write a lot, so I don't worry about it. And probably the most relevant response I can offer is that I can get actually like quite depressed if I haven't been working on stuff for a matter of days. And sometimes it'll arise in a way that I'm like not really quite sure why I'm feeling so glum, and then I'm realizing that it's kind of like creativity, like working on something is kind of like a certain like mental nourishment, and if I'm depriving myself of it, then I get pretty I'll kind of feel kind of lost. So writing keeps me like mentally like on track and like in focus. If I think it would be the good way.
Yeah. So is it kind of anxiety? Like you feel like, oh yeah, I haven't written in a few days. I should be writing. Is there anxiety involved because you should be doing it, or do you not?
it's not that, although that, I mean, fuck, deadlines will certainly help make you feel that though. I mean,
Yeah.
just the feeling of there, I can tell you that today I'm pretty relaxed about it, but I know that there's, I know, and I need to be picking up the guitar again soon. Like I've been off tour for 2 weeks, and I haven't started songwriting yet, and that's not a major problem, but don't go another, shouldn't go another week, Uh,
Right.
and so it's like minor anxiety, but sometimes anxiety is fucking crazy. But mostly, no, mostly I'll just feel kind of shiftless and
Yeah.
kind of a little bit like lost at sea if I don't feel like I'm like working on something.
Yeah. So you mentioned deadlines, and rather than make this like a pandemic question, because I'm sure you've gotten tons of those. Like as a writer, I write really well under deadline. I will create a false deadline for myself. Like a false
Mm.
deadline to me isn't, oh, how much can I get done in an hour? Start the stopwatch. It's if my wife and I have to be someplace in an hour, I'll start writing an hour before that because I know there's a hard stop. Like I know that if I
Oh,
have to stop, then I get a lot done. But if I sat here for an hour, I wouldn't get nearly as much done. Um, and I know that about myself because I do a lot of work, travel for work, and I live in
uh-huh.
DC, and so I live in DC and then take the train to New York, and I'll get more done in those 3 hours than I ever would if I sat here for 3 hours because I know the train's going to stop and I've got to put my laptop away. So, yeah, so I'm curious
Yeah.
where, sounds like you work pretty well under deadline. So I guess and I think with not that this is a pandemic question, but people always thought that, I think there was an expectation that since you weren't touring, oh, you'll get so much done because there's great expanses of time. But a lot of songwriters said, yeah, that was actually the large expanses of time actually didn't help. So I don't know. Where do you fall in that?
I found the pandemic to be really quite similar to my day-to-day life. It was,
Yeah.
I am always, on myself, on my own case to be getting stuff done, to be getting work, to be getting whatever various works done. And the pandemic was just more of that. And so I do impose my own deadlines upon myself. That sometimes I think that they always make some kind of general sense. I don't, if they're just fake, no one's going to follow them, right?
Right.
Like you
Yeah.
have to have this script done by next Monday because an earthquake's coming, or, it's like, that's stupid.
Right.
But,
Right. Right.
but I do, generally it'll be like, you only have so much time to work on this or that thing because another project is looming and you can't,
Yeah.
you need to get to that soon. But so the pandemic I thought was kind of what I enjoyed the most about the large expanse of free time that the pandemic kind of unfortunately offered to all of us is that it offered me this freedom to continue working, but to work on a weirder tangents that I often would think you don't have time for, or
Yeah.
So I was able to like kind of open up more creatively and work on stuff that was like less important, but was still like interesting and still was kind of feeding me that need and that interest to kind of be working on your craft or whatever.
Were those songs you're talking about or other types of things in
Songs
general?
and writing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I for the pandemic, I'm guilty of, I've been trying to, I've been successful at, let's see, like, like 17 years ago now, I managed to write my first screenplay. And that's the way I see writing is, and this would be applicable for a song or for an album, if for any type of writing, and probably for a lot of walks of life. If I can just do it, if I can just get one done and just kind of show it and show myself that it's possible, and then kind of like be able to reflect and be like, oh yeah, you did that, that's something that's conceivable. Then I can move forward, then I can do it again. So I've written a lot of scripts in the last 17 years because I consider it to be something like manageable. I want to start being able to do that with novels. It's just I haven't finished a novel yet. So
Right.
and I just wish I would finish a novel, because I do believe that then I'd be like, oh, it's possible. It's possible. it takes this
Yeah.
amount of months, or it takes this amount, it takes a year and a half or whatever. I don't even know yet because I haven't been able to do it. But I started a few over the pandemic.
Right. Well, when I remember when I was writing my dissertation for my PhD, I don't know, there's some, most people that start their PhD programs don't finish, I think, because it's a daunting thing. They say to you basically, okay, you have a year and a half or a year to write your dissertation. And people either don't start for 11 months or they go, oh my God, 300 pages, I can never do that. But what I did was I bought this book called Your Dissertation on 15 Minutes a Day. And it wasn't this like new agey thing. It was by this woman who was a PhD in, I think, education. And she said, break it up into manageable chunks. So rather than saying 300 pages in a year, say 10 pages a week for 30 weeks. Well, hell, I can do that. Right. And that was really changed how with that kind of deadline, that wasn't a deadline, but still breaking it up, into more manageable chunks and perceiving it that way made it a lot more attainable,
Yeah. I haven't pulled that off yet but I think about that as well. I think about, I think a creative, and I think a creative type of book, it would be like the, in books I like to read are like journal entry books,
Yeah.
like one I think of from forever ago is like actually like The Color Purple. The Color Purple
Yeah.
is like a journal entries, and it's a real page turner in a sense that they're all kind of pretty concise, and you're always but anyway, imagine being like, just write one of those a day or whatever you need.
Yeah.
If your schedule is busier, then just be like, write 4 a week or something like that. But I haven't done that yet, but I haven't come up with that book idea, I guess.
Yeah. Do you journal? Do you like to journal?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You do. Is that an important part of the something you do every day?
No, I more like at least one a month, and I do that, and that's just more. I actually don't look at it as like the importance of writing. I look at it as the importance of documenting. So I see if I'm hitting it at least once a month, and I can just do an overview of what's going on. It's really just more of a personal thing that I can like look back on.
Right. Do you ever go back to those for song ideas?
No, I guess I haven't.
Oh, really? Totally.
The funny thing about it, the way I worry about with journaling is I worry that I'll never be interested in reading it. I just assume that one day I'll be old and I'll be like, all right, here we go. Let's start at the top. But I'm worried I won't care.
Yeah. I interviewed Anthony Doerr, the writer. He wrote All the Light We Cannot See. And he told me one time that writer's block is a failure of courage. That's what he called it. He said, it doesn't exist. Like, just get the damn stuff out. Like, you're not that important. Just write the stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah. How do you feel about writer's block? Is that a thing? Or maybe a rut? Or what do you do if you find that you're in a rut? What are some of the ways that you get out of it?
Yeah, it's not something that I've experienced, it's not something that I struggle with, I guess. But that's not to say I don't have it at all. I just, there's just some days that are just not right, that just aren't, and sometimes it can be, like for songwriting, for music, it can be like a week long or something like that. And I write enough music that it's just not really something I concern myself with.
Yeah.
So if I'm in a time period, if I'm in a season where I'm working on a lot of music, I'll pick up the guitar that morning anyway, and I'll play it, and I'll kind of have a sense that nothing's going to happen. And so if I'm smart, I'll let myself off the hook after about half an hour and just be like, just go do something else. Like, do anything else. You can have the day off. And I just don't ever think of it as writer's block. I just think of it as a total, like almost like physiological lack of creativity, just a total disinterest. And so, like, how do you fabricate interest when it's just, you're just, and it doesn't mean that because sometimes I can have on a day like that, I can still play guitar for a couple hours because I like music and I can just mess around. but I also, with that thought in the back of my mind of like, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. Like, you can just do
Yeah.
whatever you want. But
I think I have all these Hemingway quotes. Hemingway, I think, now that we're talking about this, Hemingway said that he would always stop writing for the night when he still had something left in the tank because he was terrified of starting the next day with nothing to say. So he'd always stop. I found that to be like tremendous discipline to
that seems
resist the
clever.
temptation. Yeah. And that's the way he did that. Of course, there were other issues as well, but, you know, write drunk, edit sober. That was one of his things. He has all those, you know, he has all those famous lines, but
Yeah.
yeah, but that idea of, don't empty the tank. Always stop when there's a little bit something left to say.
One of my favorite books of his, and just favorite book in general, is A Movable Feast.
Yeah.
And I've read that a few times because I just find it, which I think is like it's actually an entertaining book. I don't know, maybe just as maybe people such as ourselves who kind of like fantasize about writing, like
Yeah.
it's a good book. But I always think of him walking up to a restaurant and gazing in at diners and feeling hungry and then being like, we'll hold that. Like, and his thought was like, you should be hungry. Like, you need to be like, you have to actually like experience these like physical or physiological, strains to get emotional and to write.
Do you have a writing ritual? I mean, I have one. For me, like, I never write and revise in the same chair. And I think that's important. And there's, I just think I think you need, for when I revise, I've got to get as far away from the writing process as I can. You know, the closer you are to your writing process, I think the closer you are to your writing process, the easier it is to miss stuff. So I always find that I'll do the opposite often, of what I do when I write, and that helps me. There's a certain time of day when I like to write, certain things I have to have with me because I think that's a confidence builder. So I'm curious, how important is the ritual of writing, to your process?
No, I guess I don't have anything. I mean, there's a few things that pop into mind, but maybe not as idiosyncratic as those. But
Right.
but I do when I'm songwriting, I like to put on a like a B movie, or maybe an action movie or a horror movie, just something that's like visually just kind of piques my interest without engaging too much. That way I can kind of just, it's just a little like some like fun treat I can get visually while I'm working on.
And that's not distracting. Like, that's not distracting.
Not
really.
not when I'm playing with music. Like, it's actually great, I think.
Really?
But I can't have anything like that on. I can't have anything visual or narrative going on when I'm actually writing with words.
Yeah.
But I do love to listen to when I'm working on scripts. I listen to records all day.
Really? So listening to writing scripts, you actually listen to music.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I can't. I have to have total silence. It's anything like that is distracting. You don't find that distracting? That's so interesting.
No, I unfortunately I don't engage with the music terribly much, but it's like I'm able to like almost with like I'm able to like bob in and out of the songs, and kind of catch little bits here and there. But I also like to like, there's a tone I like to set, I mean, like so I'll like listen to types of music if I feel like it's reflects the story, or if there's like a certain tone, if I'm writing like something that's like a horror or thriller, I like to kind of keep the music darker and heavier.
How about time of day? Does that matter to you?
I just love the morning. I'm just a big believer in like that you actually rested your brain for 8 hours, hopefully.
Right.
If that's what you got, and you're fresh. I mean, I wake up with tons of ideas, and I can feel everything in me feeling exhausted by 10 p.m. at least, easily, but if not earlier than that.
Was there a time in your life, when we were younger, that you would write it? Like, because I've read some recently, and this guy's in his 40s and he has kids, so he likes to write from 11 p.m. to like 5 a.m. And I just don't know how that's even possible, even family or no family. But were you ever the kind of person that could write through the night?
No, it's just never me. In
Yeah.
my, I have friends who I think still do that, and we're all just, it's like, I'm a morning person, I'm a night person. It's just like people
Yeah.
are different. Night owls, I just don't get it. I don't. To me, I would think somebody who's a quote unquote night owl is somebody who like veges out all day long,
Yeah. Right.
like I would just have to like exert no energy so I could somehow, and I'd have to take a nap at like 7 p.m.
Right.
or something.
I know. I know. I could never pull all nighters in college. I just could
Yeah.
not do it. There was a point in my brain just, it couldn't function. Um, can you, well, wait, I was going to say, when you say morning now, define morning, because for some songwriters, that's like, 11 a.m. But when you say morning, what do you mean?
Back to, well, it's as I've gotten older, it's gotten earlier and
Right.
earlier. So by mornings, it used to be like noon, like it's
Right.
just like
Right.
woke up and like I'm like not drunk anymore, and now I can like work on stuff. But now
Yeah.
it's more like I this is now it's like morning, as in like I guess I don't like to. I get up probably like I don't really like getting up at 7, but that's just kind of like when the house wakes up. But I'm like kind of doing stuff by 9. Uh, but this is back to Hemingway, something that I often think about that he says that I just don't follow is I read first. And I know, and I kind of, and I so it's just like, you probably are, since you like Hemingway so much, you're probably aware that he believes in writing first. And then after you're done writing for the day, then
Yeah.
then you read after that. And I just love, I guess it's a little bit of that guilty pleasure that I love reading. And I, I feel that if I don't get to it kind of first thing when I'm just kind of slowly getting up in the morning, that the day progresses in a way that I won't sit down. It's hard
Yeah.
for me to sit down with a book at 4 p.m. because I'm like, there's just other stuff to do now.
Yeah.
But I do think that there is some of that like precious, like early morning, like, like all these synapses are firing and stuff that maybe I'm kind of burning through a little bit by reading for, a couple hours first. But, I sometimes some mornings if I can wake up and I can be like, no, man, I'm just want to jump into something, and I will. I
Yeah.
won't discourage. I won't be like, no, you have to read, because I do also, as I think is important, I do read like militantly. Like I do think it's like that's an important part of your schedule.
Yeah, let's talk about that now then, because I do find that songwriters, for the most part, are voracious readers. Um, but so is that something you do? This is going to be a big question, but is it something you do every day? Like make time to say every, if you can do it every day. Who do you like to read? Do you have genres that you like to, genres you like to read? Whether they influence your songwriter, yes or no, that's kind of, that would be great. But yeah, let's talk about that. Who do you like
Yeah,
to read? And
I go through a lot of different phases, I guess. And uh, right now, I've just been getting more interested in. I've just kind of been looking for more fun, more good times in my books. So I've been leaning more toward genre, being like kind of like mystery thrillers and or a little bit like kind of light sci-fi, I guess I'd say.
mhm.
I don't think I can get into too heavy of I did read like the first three Dune books, which I guess is pretty heavy sci-fi actually, but those are great because there's like a lot of kind of like light philosophy in there and stuff as well. uh but those I can justify reading just about anything, because just reading prose I think is important in general. But there will be seasons where if I'm having a heavy season of working on lyrics for an album, and if there's a certain then I definitely think about, well, what am I reading at the time, because that's really
Mhm.
consuming your day. It's consuming your headspace, like what you're reading. Sometimes some books don't actually, and maybe that's where I go back to. Like I started reading like Patricia Highsmith. I think she's pretty cool, and that's kind of so like these early, mid-century of last century, like thrillers, mysteries, and it's fun and actually doesn't really stay with me. So it's a little bit more, like that's a little bit
Right.
more of just like the joy of reading. But again, I believe that I'm still learning from how she puts a story together, and that's like there's always something I hope there's always something you're picking up.
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, if I'm working on an album, then I might want to keep my reading focused a little bit more on like what's your takeaway from this, like what are you learning, what would that be? I don't know, like I maybe just kind of tackling stuff that's a little bit heavier. I'm kind of blanking at the moment, but uh maybe I'd go back to something that somebody like reading somebody like old Hemingway novels, maybe depending on what I'm writing about, like Richard Yates, I think, is a cool writer as far as like domesticity is concerned
Yeah.
in relationships.
When it comes to lyrics, are you a pen and paper person or a computer person?
I was pen and paper, uh, forever until I couldn't deny that just like the notes and the
Yeah.
computer that's in your pocket that you're walking around with, I just kind of got to a point where I was like, well, this is just really far more efficient than
Yeah.
and I do think there's like something like I lost some romance by no longer carrying a pad of paper in my back pocket, and a mini notepad in my back pocket. But that's fine. I grew with the times, I guess. I still
And
feel
do you,
compelled. I still feel like I have to write them on. I still have to transcribe them to a notebook though,
yeah.
because that's some kind of connection I have to like my younger self before computers, before computer
Yeah.
times. And so I still have everything documented on pen and paper. But I mean, it's like it's still I could just print it from my fucking phone, but there's just something
Right.
about it. It's just like I guess that's a little bit about. I don't even think of it as a superstition. It's just like it's just part of the process that I believe has to still happen,
Yeah.
even
Do
though it doesn't.
you, yeah, do you have all those? I mean, I imagine there's just got to be thousands of voice memos and notes on that phone, right? Of all of those song ideas when they come to you.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's the other super handy thing. It's a voice memo.
But the,
I put every song I write is logged in there.
but even like the ideas they're coming to you when you're doing something else, do you have? I guess I ask because is there any kind of filing system? How do there's got to be so many notes and melodies and things like that. How do how often do you go back to those? And is there any filing system to, organizations you know what to look for if you're going through them?
Yeah, and it's really not too bad. If I'm whatever record I'm writing for, all the voice memos they'll I've been working on a cursive record, so I'll give the song some kind of arbitrary title that's not totally arbitrary, but something that I might be able to remember if I see that title, I'll be like, oh yeah, that song. It doesn't always work. But then I just mark CLP10 after that. So like cursive LP10. And then I can just go at the top of voice memos and write in CLP10 and have my list of everything I've been working on for the last year. And that's my, it's a file of sorts.
I interviewed Brian Fallon about a year ago, and he said, I'm going to quote him pretty much directly. He said, if any songwriter tells you they go back through those old voice memos, they're lying. He goes, I have thousands of them. I've never, ever gone back to any of them. And no one has ever told me that since. No one's ever agreed with him, but I always tell that story because I think it's funny because maybe some songwriters like, yeah, actually, now that you think about it, I never go back to
I
those.
know I do have some friends that do. I don't do this, but I have some friends, that songwriter friends, who will be like, oh, ba, 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 da, 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 and they like,
Yeah.
and it's like, I would never fucking listen to that shit.
Okay. Oh,
I would never.
yeah.
I mean, I'm talking like I have tons of voice memos, but they're all like compositions. Like
Yeah.
I'll sit with my guitar for 10 minutes to 4 hours working on whatever it is I'm trying to like figure out for a song, and then I'll voice memo it at the end. And
Yeah.
that's a worthwhile something to listen to. But if it's all just like little scripts or like little scraps that are like in like fits and starts, I would find that confounding and boring probably.
Right. All right. Last question then. The role of movement. I have been really fascinated by this topic recently. The role of movement that plays to the process. And, there's a couple of categories. There's the deliberate movement, like the walking, the running, the hiking, the biking, that people get a lot of great song ideas when they're doing those things. And then there's the monotonous activities Vacuuming, I've heard.
Ah,
Washing dishes, cleaning, things that don't require brain power. And
mm,
so when that happens, your creative mind is really comes out. And I think in the past year or two, because of the pandemic, people have been home, they've been doing a lot more of those things.
yeah.
So how often does that happen for you?
Well, first off, that reminds me of like my favorite job that I had. I had back when I was still in college. I was a custodian, and it was really low key custodial work. It was great. I was a custodian for an insurance building in an insurance office. So it was just clean. It was 5 days a week, and you just cleaned your own clean every day. You know, you took out the garbage, took out the trash, and then you just like vacuumed something that you vacuumed 24 hours ago, and wiped down stuff that whatever, you understand what I'm saying. It's
Yeah.
just like it was always sparkling clean.
Yep.
But it was excellent because would I would spend the entire time working on lyrics, and I wouldn't even know,
Hmm.
I wouldn't even notice the work I was
While you
doing.
were cleaning, while you were cleaning. Okay.
I was just completely absorbed in writing the whole time. I was like, this is great. I'm getting paid. This is just the best job. It was the best job because I was completely in my own head the whole time. Uh, but but then also movement is the way I do things. I walk around all the time. I walk around when I'm working up ideas for the next story I'm going to work on. I walk around working on lyrics, and I think that's why I like to put a mindless or not, basically a visual feast of a movie when I'm working on music on a guitar, because that's the one thing that kind of bums me out is I kind of wish I could walk around,
Yeah,
with my
right.
guitar and walk around the neighborhoods, but I probably just look like a freak. So,
I just actually just interviewed a songwriter who was it, Erin Ray, told me that she walks around her house with a guitar and she has hardwood floors, and so it's great. I think for the reverb. But she said that's exactly what she does,
uh,
and so she'll keep I think like pads of paper all around the house, so she
uh,
doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, it's in the other side of the house. I got to go get it. So you actually say like it's time for me to write. I'm gonna get up and walk.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
What
I
do you
love
think that
to.
does? Yeah. What do you?
Uh, I Well, there's like some cheap parts of it is the tawdry parts is that it's just multitasking and I can get some exercise while I'm at it. But but I know that most it is just that I can't. I'll start feeling restless if I'm because it can be I find that process to be fairly slow going. And it's just and it just takes a while. It's slow going, and it takes a while. Uh, I can't just go out for one song. It can take me. I mean, it can take I don't know. It can take me weeks and multiple walks I'll do an entire walk and only get a verse, and that's a
Wow.
verse that I might scrap. I'll just scrap later. I just think that staring at a wall or just staring at your kitchen or your living room, it's just like there's got to be more you could be doing, but unlike you can't go back to like the guitar playing. It's like you can't stare at a movie because then you're just like lost in its narrative. But out in the
Right.
world, there's not really a narrative. It's just kind of there's just like still like it's kind of a feast for the eyes, and you can kind of enjoy a nice walk. But it's you can also kind of get lost and not really notice where you are, your surroundings, if you're absorbed in your work, or you can take in your surroundings if you're not having a great day of writing.
And that's why a lot of songwriters told me during the early stages of the pandemic, that they couldn't write because you couldn't go outside. It wasn't any deep reason. It was, hey, listen, I
Mm-hmm.
write about experiences, and if I
Mm-hmm.
can't go to restaurants, go to bars, see people, what am I going to write about?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I heard that so often. I think the most common thing I heard was I wrote a lot for about a month, and then that was it.
Huh.
And it was just hard to write because what are you going to write about if you're stuck in your house the whole time? So,
Don't you think that I this just talking about this like walking around, it occurred to me that like is this why countless songs have like the line I'm walking down the street?
I don't know. It's
That's like
it's
such a common
possible.
line.
Right. That's true. I know. Now every time I hear a song, I'm going to think of that.
It's like,
But
yeah,
there's
you
another.
were walking down the street, weren't you?
Right. Yeah, boy. See, now I'm never going to not think about that. I'm going to listen for those lyrics and then think about what. Yeah, that's great. But there's a great book, another book you should read. It's called The Friendship by Adam Sisman, Sisman, and it's about the relationship, the friendship between Wordsworth and Coleridge, the Romantic poets.
Huh.
And they estimate that Wordsworth walked about 100,000 miles in his lifetime. Of course, back then there's nothing else to do. I mean, what are you going to do, right? But I did figure it out. It was like, that's some insane, still, that's some absurd amount of walking every day. But what both of them composed almost all of their poems on walks. And
Oh.
I may get this wrong, but one of them preferred flat terrain. The other one preferred rocky terrain when they
Hmm.
composed. But I think it was Wordsworth. He would compose and he would revise in his head, and he
Oh,
wouldn't come home until the poem was finished.
wow.
So, yeah, it's a really interesting book because it talks a lot about not just about the friendship, but about how they composed and how they composed.
This,
And
this
it's a
is
great book.
this is reminding me that David Sedaris, I think, walks like a lot as well.
Yeah.
I want to say that he walks. I think he said he walks 20 miles a day. Like not like every time, like maybe a
I've
day.
read that book. I think I read an article in the New Yorker that he wrote where he talked about walking because I think was that the one where he talks about picking up trash? I
Yeah.
know it
Uh-huh.
was. Yeah, it was that one. I mean, I'm a big runner and I use running as a way to solve problems. I mean, it's
Mhm.
if I do find that as I'm writing things are coming, there's a comfort to knowing that those things will get loosened and shaken up as I run.
Oh yeah.
So I actually use that deliberately
Mhm.
as a part, and going for walks and things like that. I mean, we're doing it all wrong in office environments. I mean, at some point, people need to realize that sitting for 8 hours is really, really not good for productivity.
Yeah,
So,
seriously.
and that's it for the latest episode of Songwriters on Process. Don't forget, you can find all of my interviews with over 200 songwriters on my Songwriters on Process website at songwritersonprocess.com, going all the way back to 2010. You can read them, watch them, or listen to them. So until next time, thanks for listening.